The year is 1992. The month is November. The air in the auction hall is stale. It smells of old paper and defeat. A young clerk, barely 20, reads from a ledger. His voice is nervous. It cracks on the numbers. Lot 1, the main office building, brick facade, peeling paint on the window frames. He clears his throat. Sold. For $112,000. He looks at the name on the bid slip, Evelyn Reed. He frowns. The name is familiar, but he can't place it. Lot 2, the primary auction floor and grandstands, 2.7 acres, gravel parking lot. Sold for $95,000. Again, the same name, Evelyn Reed. He glances over at the old man sitting in the front row, Mr. Caldwell. The man who built this place, the man who was losing it today. Caldwell's face is a mask, still unreadable. Lot 3, the livestock pens and sorting equipment, rusted gates, worn concrete. Sold for $80,000. The clerk's hand trembles as he writes it down. Buyer, Evelyn Reed. He totals the numbers, $287,000. He looks up from his paper. He scans the quiet crowd. He sees a woman standing in the back, alone, her hands in the pockets of her canvas jacket. She just nods, once. The clerk walks over to Mr. Caldwell. He whispers, "Sir, the total comes to $287. It's all one buyer, a woman, Evelyn Reed." He pauses. "I don't think she has any business buying this place." The room is silent. Everyone is watching the old man. The auctioneer, who had a voice like thunder, now reduced to a whisper. Mr. Caldwell looks at the clerk. His eyes are clear and filled with a terrible understanding. He says, "Son, you're wrong. She has every business, more than anyone else here." Because this channel tells the stories of people who were told no. The stories of those who were written off, dismissed, ignored, and then spent the next 30 years proving everyone wrong. If you believe those stories matter, subscribe. Because the story of Evelyn Reed is not about the day she bought the auction house. It's about the day one was denied to her. It starts, as these stories often do, with loss. The year was 1962. Evelyn was 19 years old. Her father, John Reed, was a good man, a quiet farmer. He worked 160 acres of rolling Ohio land, corn and soy, a small herd of dairy cows. He loved the dirt. He understood its language. But the land is a harsh partner. A single moment, a tractor rollover on a steep grade, and he was gone, leaving Evelyn and her grandfather Thomas. The farm was mortgaged to the hilt. The equipment was old. The barn needed a new roof. The bank sent a letter, polite, but firm. The note was coming due, 90 days. Evelyn's grandfather Thomas sat at the kitchen table. His left sleeve was pinned at the elbow. A reminder of a corn picker accident from 1938. One arm. He'd farmed with one arm for 24 years. He looked at his granddaughter. He saw the same steel in her eyes he'd seen in her father's. He said, "They took my arm. They took your daddy. They took everything but the dirt. The dirt is enough." Evelyn knew what she had to do. The farm needed a newer, more reliable tractor, a John Deere 4010, the workhorse of its day. There was an estate auction 2 counties over. A farmer had passed. His equipment was being sold. She took the last of their savings, $3,000, tucked into a bank envelope. She drove the family's old Ford pickup to the auction hall, the same hall she would one day own. In 1962, it was a place of men, farmers in denim and flannel, their faces weathered by sun and worry, the air thick with the smell of chewing tobacco and diesel. She walked in. The talking stopped. Every eye turned to her. A 19-year-old girl, alone. She found a spot near the back, stood straight, waited. The auctioneer climbed onto the block, a man in his prime. Arthur Caldwell. His voice was a force of nature. He could sell a broken plow for twice its worth. He was a respected man, deacon at his church, coached Little League. He started the bidding. Harrows, plows, cultivators. Then it came. The 4010. Gleaming green paint. It looked powerful. It looked like hope. Caldwell started the bidding. $2,000. A hand went up. $2,100. Another hand. $22. Evelyn held her breath. She waited. Let them fight it out. The bidding slowed at $2,600. Caldwell scanned the crowd. Going once. Going twice. Evelyn raised her hand, clear and high. $2,700, she said. Her voice was steady, louder than she expected. A ripple went through the crowd. Heads turned. Whispers. Caldwell looked at her. He didn't smile. He didn't scowl. He just looked. He knew her father, knew of his passing. He saw a girl in over her head. $2,800, a man in the front shouted. Evelyn didn't hesitate. $29. The hall was quiet now. It was a duel. The man in front looked back at her, shook his head. $3,000. That was it. That was all she had. Evelyn raised her hand again. $3,100. She was bluffing, praying. Caldwell stopped the auction. He held up a hand. Folks, let's take a short break. He stepped down from the block, walked straight to Evelyn. The crowd parted for him. He stood in front of her. He was not a cruel man. This is important to understand. His voice was gentle, almost fatherly. Young lady, Miss Reed, I knew your father, a fine man. A real shame what happened. He paused, looked her right in the eye. You have no business on this floor. This is not a place for you. These men are sharks. They'll take you for every penny. And that tractor? It's too much machine for you. You'll get hurt. You'll lose the farm your father broke his back for. I am not going to be the man who sells you the tool you use to destroy his legacy. Go home. Settle the estate. Sell the land to someone who can handle it. It's the most responsible thing to do. He genuinely believed he was helping. He was protecting her from herself, from a world he was certain she did not understand. Certainty, not cruelty. Certainty is always the antagonist. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend. By someone who thought they were being kind. Someone who believed they knew your limits better than you did. Tell us about it in the comments, because that kind of refusal, it's the hardest to fight. You can't answer it with anger. You can't argue with its logic. It can only be disproven, with decades of work. Evelyn stood there, the entire room watching. She felt a cold fury, but her face showed nothing. She looked at Arthur Caldwell, the respected man, the kind man, and she said just 2 words, "I see." Then she turned and walked out of the auction hall. She didn't run. She didn't cry. Not yet. She drove the 60 miles home. The silence in the truck was heavy. She walked into the farmhouse kitchen. Her grandfather was waiting. He looked at her face. He didn't have to ask. She sat down, told him everything, word for word. What Caldwell had said. "You have no business on this floor. Go home. Sell the land." When she was finished, Thomas was quiet for a long time. He stared out the window, at the fields his son had plowed, at the barn that needed a roof. He turned to her. His one good hand rested on the worn wood of the table. He said, "The land doesn't care who you are, man or woman, old or young, 2 arms or 1. It only cares about the work. It only remembers what you do." He stood up. "Let's go to the workshop." The workshop was a cathedral of forgotten things, old tools, broken machinery, the ghosts of 3 generations of farmers. In the back corner, under a dusty canvas tarp, sat a 1948 Alice Chalmers Model G, a strange-looking tractor, small, engine in the rear, a single plow suspended beneath the driver. It was designed for small vegetable farms, not for 160 acres of corn and soy. It hadn't run in a decade. "My first tractor," Thomas said. "Your grandmother called it the Gnat. It's not big, it's not fast, but it's ours, and it's paid for." This is where the story truly begins. Not with a purchase, but with a rebuild. For the next 90 days, they lived in that workshop. Evelyn learned to weld, to grind valves, to read schematics. Thomas, with his one good arm, was a master of leverage. He taught her how to use physics to do the work of muscle, how to make a pry bar an extension of your will. They pulled the engine apart, cleaned every piece in gasoline, honed the cylinders, replaced the rings. The magneto was shot, no parts available, so they retrofitted an ignition system from a Ford Falcon. The carburetor was clogged with ancient, varnished fuel. They boiled it in lemon juice and water on the kitchen stove. The tires were dry-rotted. New ones were too expensive. Evelyn found a set of used airplane tires. The tread was wrong, but they held air. She spent a week cutting new treads with a hot knife. The smell of burning rubber filled the barn. The neighbors watched. They talked. At the co-op. At church. The Reed place is finished. That girl and the old man, trying to fix that little toy tractor. It's a sad thing to see. A real shame. One neighbor, a man named Henderson, was different. He was older, farmed the section next to theirs. He'd known Evelyn's father since they were boys. He walked over one afternoon. Didn't say much. Just left a set of new spark plugs and a box of gaskets on the workbench. Said, "Your dad helped me raise my barn back in '55. Don't argue with me. Just get that thing running." On the 89th day, with the banker's deadline looming, they were ready. Evelyn climbed into the seat. Thomas stood back. She turned the key. The engine sputtered, coughed black smoke. Then it caught. A loud, uneven rhythm. But it was alive. The Gnat was alive. Evelyn drove it out of the workshop, into the sunlight. It looked absurd, a tiny orange machine against the vast, waiting fields. That night, the banker called, Mr. Harrison, a man who only understood numbers on a page. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. The 90 days are up. We'll need to start foreclosure proceedings." Evelyn held the phone. She looked out at the fields, silver in the moonlight. "Mr. Harrison, the spring planting is already in the ground." There was a silence on the other end of the line. "How? I was told your equipment was broken down." "We fixed it," she said. He was skeptical, but the rules were the rules. If the land was being worked, the loan could be extended, until harvest. That summer was a blur of work. The Model G was slow. It could only pull a single-bottom plow, a single-row planter. She had to work twice as hard, twice as long, as any man on a 4010. She worked from sunup to sundown. Then she worked by the light of the moon. She learned the land in a way her father never had, inch by inch. She knew every rock, every low spot that held water, every patch of clay. The small tractor was a gift in disguise. It was light. It didn't compact the soil like the big, heavy machines. It sipped gasoline instead of gulping it. Her input costs were a fraction of her neighbors. They laughed at her, at first. Then they stopped laughing, because her fields were different. The corn was taller. The bean pods were fuller. The land, free from the weight of heavy equipment, was breathing. It was thriving. That fall, she brought in a harvest that broke county records. Not in total volume, but in bushels per acre. And more importantly, in profit per acre. She drove to the bank, walked into Mr. Harrison's office. She laid a check on his desk for the full amount of the loan, plus interest, cash. He stared at the check, then at her. Her hands were calloused. Her face was tanned by the sun. She looked older than 20. He cleared his throat. "Well, I'll be." Evelyn didn't smile. She just nodded. And what happened next changed everything. She didn't just save the farm. She started a revolution. Quietly, without speeches, without fanfare. She did it with numbers and with dirt. Let me tell you about the next 30 years. 1963. She paid off the farm. 160 acres, owned free and clear. She bought Mr. Henderson's gaskets and plugs and a new tire for his pickup. He tried to say no. "Don't argue with me," she said. 1965. She bought her first piece of land, 20 acres bordering her property. The owner had passed away. His kids wanted to sell. She walked the land, felt the soil, made an offer. Cash. 1968. The barn got its new roof. She and Thomas did the work themselves. She learned how to truss a roof. He taught her from the ground. One arm, still stronger than most men with two. 1970. The Alice Chalmers Model G was retired. Not sold, never sold. She parked it in the barn, cleaned it, polished it. A monument to the year she was told no. She bought 2 more just like it, and hired her first 2 employees, teenage kids from town who everyone else had written off. She didn't teach them just to drive. She taught them to weld, to maintain their own machines, to understand the soil. 1972. Arthur Caldwell drove past the Reed place. He did it often. He saw the new roof on the barn. He saw the 3 orange tractors moving in perfect unison across the fields, like water bugs on a pond. He saw the fields, greener, healthier than his own. He felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't regret, not yet. It was confusion, a crack in his certainty. 1975. Evelyn bought the 80-acre parcel to the north, the Miller farm. It had gone bankrupt. Too much debt, too much big equipment. She paid the family's debts and offered Mr. Miller a job, cash. The expansion continued, a steady, rhythmic acquisition. 1978, 40 acres to the east, cash. 1981, 100 acres to the west, cash. 1984, the old Henderson place after he retired. He sold it to her for half its market value, said he wanted it in good hands. Cash. By 1990, Reed Agriculture was not the biggest farm in the county, but it was the most profitable, by far. She never borrowed a dime, never took a government subsidy. She owned the land. She owned the equipment. She was beholden to no one. Her method was famous. Small batch farming on a large scale. A fleet of small, lightweight, modified tractors. Intensive soil management. Crop rotation that baffled the experts at the university. She was planting things they said shouldn't grow in Ohio soil, and she was getting premium prices for them. She became a legend. A quiet one, She never gave interviews, never went to farming conferences. She just worked, and the land remembered. While Evelyn was building an empire, Arthur Caldwell was watching his crumble. The world was changing. Farming was changing. Family farms were being swallowed by corporate agriculture. The small-time auctions that were his bread and butter, they were disappearing. He had tried to adapt, tried to get the big corporate accounts, but his way of doing business, a handshake, a man's word, it didn't work in that world. He took out loans. He leveraged the business. He sunk deeper and deeper into debt. He was a good man in a world that no longer valued his kind of goodness. His certainty had become a liability. By 1992, it was over. The bank he'd done business with for 40 years sent a letter, polite but firm. The same kind of letter Evelyn had received 30 years earlier. The auction was scheduled for November. The day of the auction, the whole county turned out, not to bid, but to watch, to see the end of an era. Arthur Caldwell sat in the front row, his family around him. He looked old, defeated. When the bidding started, a woman's voice came from the back of the room, clear, steady. The same voice that had offered $2,700 for a tractor 30 years ago. Evelyn Reed. She didn't bid on lots. She bid on the entire holding, the building, the land, the business itself. Her first bid silenced the room. It was more than fair. It was generous. No one bid against her. They wouldn't have dared. And so we come back to the beginning, the young clerk, the final tally, the whisper. She has no business buying this place. And the old auctioneer's reply, she has every business. After the paperwork was signed, Evelyn walked over to Arthur Caldwell. He stood up to meet her. He looked a broken man. He expected gloating. He expected revenge. He expected her to remind him of that day, of the words he had spoken. You have no business on this floor. Evelyn looked at him. She saw not an enemy, but a man who had been trapped by his own certainty. She handed him an envelope. He opened it. Inside was a contract, an offer of employment, to run the auction house. His old auction house, as a manager, with a generous salary and a share of the profits. He stared at the paper. He couldn't speak. Why? He finally managed to ask. His voice was a rasp. Evelyn looked around the hall, at the worn benches, the auction block. Because you were right, she said, about one thing. That day, you said this was a place for sharks. I'm changing the rules. From now on, this is a place that gives people a start, not an end. And I need a man who knows this business to help me run it. The quiet devastation of that moment, it wasn't vengeance, it was grace. It was a kindness more profound than any cruelty, because it forced him to see the truth, that his attempt to protect her had been the greatest obstacle she had ever faced, and that she had overcome it so completely, that she could afford to be merciful. He took the job. He worked for her for 10 more years. He never again told anyone what they could or couldn't do. He learned to listen. He learned to see potential where he had once seen only limits. That's not the end of the story. Because a legacy is not what you build for yourself. It's what you build for others. Evelyn renamed the business the Reed Co-op and Auction. It became a hub for a new generation of farmers, especially women, and anyone else the banks and equipment dealers had written off. She offered microloans, based not on credit scores, but on character and the quality of their soil. She created an equipment sharing program with a fleet of small, efficient machines, just like her gnats. She held workshops on soil health, on machine repair, on financial literacy. She taught them self-sufficiency, the ultimate form of freedom. No debt, no dependency, no asking for permission. She created a scholarship fund for young women wanting to study agronomy or mechanical engineering. The Evelyn Reed No Business Scholarship. To date, it has sent over 200 young women to college, doctors, engineers, farmers, scientists. Every year at the award ceremony, she tells the same story about a 19-year-old girl, a John Deere 4010, and a man who told her to go home. She doesn't tell it with anger. She tells it as a lesson. The most dangerous limitation is the one imposed by someone who genuinely believes they are protecting you. Certainty, delivered with kindness, is more damaging than outright hostility, because it cannot be fought with anger. It can only be disproven with decades of work. Evelyn Reed passed away in 2018, at the age of 75. She left the farm, the co-op, everything, to a trust, run by the graduates of her scholarship program. Her will stipulated that the land could never be sold to a corporate entity. It must always be farmed, in small plots, by independent farmers. Her office in the old auction house is preserved just as she left it. On the wall, behind her desk, hangs a single object. Not a photograph, not an award, a wrench. A strange, custom-made wrench, with a long handle for extra leverage. The one her grandfather Thomas built, so he could tighten the head bolts on an engine with only one arm. It's a physical reminder that you don't need what they tell you you need, that you can make your own tools, that you can invent your own way, that exclusion is the mother of innovation. The story of Evelyn Reed is the story of America at its best, the story of a quiet revolution, waged with dirt and ingenuity and the stubborn refusal to be told who you are. It's a story about the long game. Proving people wrong takes time. It takes patience. It takes a lifetime of showing up and doing the work. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is being told no. Someone is being told they have no business, that they should go home, that they should give up. And they are being told this by someone who sounds reasonable, someone who sounds kind. This story is for them. It's proof that the quietest voice can echo for generations, that the smallest tractor can plow the largest field, and that the only person who gets to decide your business is you. If this story means something to you, if you've ever felt like Evelyn Reed, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who is standing in their own auction hall, about to be told no. Let them know they are not alone. Let them know that the dirt is enough and the land remembers. Thank you for listening. The work continues. The story is never over. It just waits for the next person, willing to pick up the tools and begin. The legacy is not in the numbers, the acres, the dollars. It's in the soil, the rich, dark soil that Evelyn spent a lifetime tending. It's in the hands of the young farmers she mentored, who now walk their own land, free and clear. They talk about her in hushed, reverent tones, at the co-op, over coffee. They trade Evelyn stories. How she could diagnose an engine problem by its sound. How she could tell the nitrogen content of soil by its smell. How she once stared down a seed salesman from a multinational corporation. He tried to sell her genetically modified seeds, with a long, complicated contract. She listened patiently, for a full hour. Then she picked up a handful of dirt from a nearby field and held it out to him. She said, "My contract is with this. It's older than your company, and it will be here long after your company is gone." The salesman had no answer. He just packed his briefcase and left. That was Evelyn. Quiet, factual, devastating in her simplicity. Her grandfather, Thomas, lived to see it all. He passed away in 1985, a peaceful end, in the farmhouse he was born in. Evelyn was with him. His last words to her were not about the farm or the money. He just squeezed her hand, his one good hand, and whispered, "You did good, kid. You did the work." That was the only praise she ever needed. The Alice Chalmers Model G. The Gnat. It sits today in the County Historical Museum, in a place of honor. The display card next to it doesn't talk about horsepower or engine displacement. It just has a quote from Evelyn. "They told me I couldn't buy the tractor I wanted, so I used the tractor I had. It turned out to be the tractor I needed." Children on school trips look at the funny orange machine. They don't understand its significance. Not really. But maybe, just maybe, a young girl will see it and feel a little spark, a little bit of stubbornness, a refusal to accept the limits others place on her. And that is how the work continues. That is how a legacy truly lives. Not as a memory, but as an inspiration. A quiet, persistent hum, like a small engine that never, ever quits. The dirt is enough. The work is enough. You are enough.